Okay. Good evening. Welcome to the City of Fort Lauderdale Historic Preservation Board. My name is Arthur Marcus. I'm the vice chair, and we will begin the meeting tonight by calling the meeting to order, and we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, I guess we should first determine a quorum. We believe we do have a quorum. Do we need a roll call, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Bray? Here. Ms. Lyons? Here. Mr. Marcus?
Here.
Mr. Jones? Mr. Carney?
Present.
Mr. Rosa? Mr. Chavon?
Here.
Ms. Walker? Here. You have a quorum.
Great, thank you. And also, I'd like to introduce Ashley Walker, who's our new member of the board. Jason, who was formerly chair, has been forced to resign since he had too many absences. Ashley, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself, a sentence or two?
Hi, thank you. My name is Ashley Walker. I am a resident here in Fort Lauderdale. I live in the Landings and am honored to be on the board and join all of you. I want to thank the mayor and Commissioner Herbst and the city commission for appointing me, and looking forward to working with everybody on this committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Are we swearing in next?
Did you want to do the minutes first? Either one
Oh,
is
I'm
fine.
sorry. Yes, we should approve the minutes. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes? If not, would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I have a few adjustments.
Pardon?
I have a few minor things.
Sure.
Page 5 rather. It says the elements that partially the criteria, it should probably be meets in there.
You're talking about the beginning of the second paragraph?
Yes. There's a missing word. It looks like it should be meets or something in there.
What are you looking at?
On page 5,
Yes.
second paragraph, elements that partially the
Oh, there's
criteria.
a word missing, yeah.
And then on page 11, the fourth paragraph down, where it refers to fire station, should be police station in both instances, in the fifth and the sixth paragraphs. That's it.
Say that again, instead of the fire station?
Yeah, it refers to fire station in two separate occasions, and they should both be police station.
Oh. Are there any other changes? So now, would somebody like to make a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes
Second?
Is it as amended with the change
As
on
amended.
page 5
as
and page
amended
11? Thank you.
by
Richard.
Richard. Thank you.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all in
Thank
favor?
you.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. The minutes are approved. So now we move to the next item on the agenda, which is case number UDP HP 22018. The owner of the City of Fort Lauderdale, and the address is 1016 Waverly Road. Is the applicant here? Pardon? 1016 Waverly Road. Good, hello.
Good
You're
evening, Enrique Sanchez, Parks Deputy Director. So we're asking to remove this item from consideration. We're no longer,
You are what?
we're asking to remove this item from consideration. We're no longer looking to demolish the little boathouse structure we'll reevaluate it when we look at long-term designs for the park.
Just one question. As an architect, I was curious as I was reading this, was there ever a structural engineer review of the structure? Because it looks like it's almost falling down.
It is, so it's gonna be fenced off, so there's no access to it for the public, but no, so we were just trying to clear it, so it would just be a flat
And
piece.
what are the plans for this?
So, so we purchased this piece of property with our parks bond, but there really isn't money in our bond for development of it. So the purpose of, we had come to you before to put up some fencing at the site because really we're just looking to open it up and make it accessible to the public. It's a beautiful site. It has some historical significance, and the public paid a lot of money for it. So we just didn't want it behind
Okay.
gates. So we saw the structure, it looked like, as you mentioned, it looks like it's falling down, so we wanted to remove it, but the neighborhood expressed some concerns and they might want to do something with it in the future.
Okay.
And at its current location, so we'll hold off and then,
So you're just basically going to fence it around?
yeah, it's already fenced, and the park is already accessible to the public. So, over the next couple of years, we're going to start looking at grants and other opportunities to develop it, but right now there is no funding in place
Okay.
to do any development.
Right, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So,
So he just withdrew the application?
Yes.
So if you'd like, I can do the public swearing in, and then you can move to the next item, or I could swear in them individually.
let's do the public swearing,
Okay.
sorry.
If you're going to speak to the board tonight, can you please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, case number 2 is UDP HP 23004, 1360 Southwest Second Court, the installation of a new ground sign. The applicant is here. Tricia, do you want to read the report?
Yes, this application is for a new ground sign located in a planned unit development at the Sailboat Bend Village. It's located adjacent to the existing townhouses at the corner of Southwest Second Court and Southwest 14th Avenue. This sign is a total of 45 square feet and is 5 feet in height with a width of 9 feet. The sign is internally illuminated, which will create a glow to the push-through text, and it's made of aluminum, and the colors are chosen to match the adjacent structure. Typically, this wouldn't be a sign that we would want to see in front of a historic landmark or within the general context of the historic district. However, in this case, it's located adjacent to this new construction, new development. And so it does fit within its immediate context and within the context of this particular housing development. So in that way, it does agree with the historic preservation design guidelines. Since it is a planned unit development, any sign that's located in this area needs to agree with its ordinance pertaining to that development itself. It doesn't describe what type of signs are able to be placed in this location within the existing ordinance. So they're going through a separate process currently to amend their PUD ordinance. But as it's going, that committee believes that they will approve the application, but it just hasn't been approved yet because they were waiting on some details pertaining to the landscaping. So we're just waiting for that approval. So in the summary conclusion, staff is finding that this application is meeting our regulations, and there is a condition that speaks to the approval of the administrative item that's concurrently being evaluated, and the fact that that needs to be completed prior to approving any permit from historic preservation. So that's one of the conditions that's outlined for the board's consideration. And then the other one is our standard condition, which is this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Thank you.
That's it.
Applicant?
I
Please
think
introduce
I think
yourself.
she's pretty much summed it up. My name is Melissa. I'm here for Art Sign
Please
Company.
state your name first.
My name is Melissa Weatherwax.
Thank you.
And like I said, I think she's pretty much summed it up pretty simply for me. We have been going back and forth with the city to submit for PUD, and we did submit some new landscaping today, so we will wait for that to be approved. But we were trying to conform and fit within the historic board and what's allowed in the area.
You mentioned landscaping. Is landscaping involved in the picture you showed of the sign with a very bare base? Will there be landscaping around there?
The landscaping is page 3 of my packet. I believe you guys have the full packet as well. We just had to add an additional line of landscaping to the back of the sign today and send it in.
Okay. I'll open it up to questions from the board. Anyone have any comments?
Yeah, I have some questions, and just a new observation. This looks like it's got a footer. Is it a concrete footer or anything like that?
Yes,
Yeah.
it does have a footer.
Okay. It's my understanding that across the street at the police station, they were required to do an archaeological survey with any digging. This looks like it's in an area that has never been disturbed before, so is there an archaeological requirement here as well? Because there will be digging?
We will, whenever we submit for permit, yes, we have to submit a survey along with our submittal for permit.
No, that's a site survey. An
And we do a
archaeological
boundary,
survey?
we do a boundary survey, topographical boundary
Right,
survey.
but I think Richard is referring to an archaeological survey.
Okay.
I don't have it in the conditions for this particular project. This area was disturbed previously when the PUD was constructed. So
Yeah.
I did not place it in there, but if the board feels that it's necessary in this instance, then that can be included as a condition.
Just a little bit, I'm trying to understand when it's appropriate, when it's not appropriate, what is happening with these archaeological reports that are done, and the necessity of them, I guess, for any project, because we're hand-picking which projects that you're requiring it for and not other ones. So I'm trying to get a better understanding of when it's necessary.
I have one comment on this discussion, is that when the original buildings were built, the sign is so close that soil would have to have been disturbed in order to get the sign in. So I wouldn't think it would be necessary at this point.
I would agree.
Comments?
Okay.
Okay. Richard, anything else? Okay. So we're up to, does anyone have any comments, questions? Would someone like to make a motion?
Two things.
I'm sorry?
Yes, two things. First, we didn't do disclosures yet. Could you please
Oh,
do
we did
disclosures?
not, I'm sorry. Do we have any, let's do disclosures. Richard?
I've been by the property many times.
Ashley?
No disclosures.
Barbara?
I've been by the property.
And no disclosures?
Nothing to disclose?
Nothing to disclose.
Okay, thank you.
And then the public?
Yes, we haven't asked the public to speak. Would anyone from the public like to speak? In that case, we'll close the public discussion. We'll open it up to board discussion. Would anyone from the board like to speak? In that case, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll move that we approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alteration under case number UDP HP 23004 located at 1360 Southwest Second Court based on the following findings of fact, based on facts and findings as outlined in the staff memorandum, and if conditions apply, is subject to the following conditions, safe applicable conditions on the record.
So that's conditions 1 and 2 on page 3 of the staff report? No other conditions?
Okay, and the conditions for the COA for major alterations are provided for consideration by the HPB if the application is to be approved. One, approval of an amendment to the PUD ordinance for the Village of Sailboat Bend to include this sign type, size, and location as required prior to applying for a building permit application, and this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscape.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, Dave seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries.
Yay.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. You guys have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next item is case UDP HP 230110, 300 Southwest First Avenue, removal of existing window and installation of new door opening. And this is the applicant. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Manuel de Welbis. I work for Mr. O'Shaughnessy, the owner of the property. And we're basically just requesting to replace a window for a door. That's
it?
about it.
Okay. If that's,
There used to be a door.
well, that's what,
Yeah.
that was going to be one of the questions.
Right.
And it was sealed up. Well, yeah, it looks like it would have been a door
In
there.
'97, when the city renovated the building, they took out the door and put a window.
So the other door on the left side doesn't look original because it looks like they took
The
out part of
building
the
is
window.
really not historic. The building itself is not historic, it's the site.
It's a site,
There
okay.
used to be a parking lot.
Okay. So the question is whether the door can go
We
into-
want to match what's existing.
Right,
So it all matches.
okay,
Simple.
good. Thank you. I'll open it up to public discussion. Oh, disclosures? Thank you, Richard. Let's start with disclosures. Richard?
I've been by the property many times.
Ashley?
I've been by the property before.
I've been by the property,
Drive-by?
right.
Nothing to disclose.
Okay. Now we'll open it up to public comment. If there's no public comment, we'll open it up to a motion from the board to move this item. Oh, I'm sorry, Trish. I'm losing it today.
That's okay. He did my job for me.
Yes,
It is a very straightforward request to replace the existing window with a new door. And it does appear that a door previously was in that location, but we couldn't find exact records to prove that. So that's why it's in front of you for your consideration. So staff found that it agreed with all of our requirements and our guidelines and did state that there are two conditions for consideration of the board. So the first is that glass would be clear. In this case, that's for the consideration of the board, depending on if you want to follow the guidelines or not. And then the second is our usual condition, which this application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements.
thank you.
May I? We have black paper on all the windows at that site right now, just because it's been vacant. So we didn't want people to
Of course,
see it, but everything will be removed and clear once tenant comes in.
okay. One question.
Yes,
What were all these pictures for? Are these just details
yeah.
of these?
We're just
conditions?
gonna match exactly
What
what's
was
there. This whole facade was part of the old shopping mall that was there, the AMC theater, basically. So it's
Okay.
all was part of that.
Okay,
So we just wanna keep it the same way. We don't wanna.
great. All right, so have we done public discussion? We opened it up to the public. We've had disclosures, so now we're open for a motion. Unless the board has anything to say. Somebody help me out here.
I'll make a motion to approve the resolution for certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP-HP 23010, located at 300 Southwest First Avenue, based upon findings of fact. Findings of fact is outlined in the staff memorandum, and there's two conditions, which are all glass doors should be clear with option for low E, and the application is subject to the approval by the building, zoning, and ULDR requirements.
Great. And is there a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Barbara. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The motion carries.
Appreciate it.
Congratulations.
Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
Thank
You
you.
too. Okay, so we are up to case number UDP-HP 23008. This is at 920 Southwest Second Avenue, installation of a 4-foot and 6-foot high horizontal plank wood fence and gate in front yard. Trish?
Yeah, this property is in the Sailboat Bend Historic District on Southwest Second Street, and the applicant is requesting a 4-foot-high fence and gate along the front of the property line in front of the structure that would be set back 3 feet to include space for landscaping. And they're also requesting a 6-foot-high fence and the same design along the western property frontage. And in our design guidelines, we do limit the height of fences and gates in the front of a building to 3 feet with 30% visibility. And so that is the recommendation of the staff, because that goes along with our guidelines. There have been instances where a 4-foot-high fence has been approved in the front yard, including this property owner's neighboring property just next door to this one, and the fence that's proposed is proposed to match the one that was approved by this board several months ago. The 6-foot-high portion that extends in front of the structure, staff doesn't agree with that, and does recommend that that be maintained at a height of 4 feet along that section of the fence. But going back into the property on the side property line, then they could have a fence that extended to 6 feet in height.
So you're saying that this city is looking to maintain a consistent lower fence along the front of the property, and the side can be higher?
The side that's behind the structure.
That's behind the structure, so it would be
front
two
facade.
heights. Okay.
Right. And our current design guidelines do state that fence heights should be limited to a height of 3
3
feet.
feet. So one question before we start discussing this. In the past, we've had a lot of fence applications. I know in the past, we've approved some 4-foot-high fences in the neighborhood. We have, okay? And what about the horizontal plank design? Is that acceptable as far as the guidelines right now?
As far as the guidelines, it doesn't specify that it has to be vertical.
Okay.
It just says wood as an option.
And with a horizontal plank, there's a space in between?
That's correct.
So it's not solid, okay.
Yeah. The applicant has provided a photograph of the proposed fence type in their application package.
This is the.
Right, yes. Yeah, okay. So let's do disclosures first. Any disclosures?
I've been by the property.
No disclosures.
I've seen the property.
No disclosures.
Nothing to disclose.
No disclosure.
Okay. And with that, is the applicant here? Please come forward. And just introduce yourself first.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity so I can be here and present my case. This is a non-contributing property.
Excuse me, what is your name?
My name is Judith Hennessy. I'm the property owner.
Thank you.
So this is a non-contributing property. I want to explain or tell you guys a situation that I endured recently. Unfortunately, a homeless person entered my property, one of the units, and I was startled and shocked when I noticed him inside. I'm not a short person, he was at least a foot taller than me, and then I had to tell him to leave, which he did. I believe if there was a fence on my property that could have avoided this situation. I also believe a 3-foot fence is not high enough or not tall enough to prevent this. And I would like to propose a tallest height if it's possible. There is another situation that happened. This property used to be rented out, and then the tenant mentioned that homeless people used to come onto the property and clean themselves in the front tap, using the tap. I locked the tap so it prevented for the future situations, or I could prevent this happening. However, I would like to protect my property with a taller fence. Also, I raised awareness to the History Broad Preservation that there is a property located at 825 Tequesta Street that has a 6-foot fence facing the street, which should have not been approved. I don't know how they get away with that. I got an email from the board that they told me they historically do not approve 6 feet. They have a tendency of approving 4-foot fence. So I would like to see if...
While you're on this subject, perhaps Tricia may be able to shed some light on this. Do we have any light here?
I think you've mentioned the one on Tequesta before to me, and it does have an outstanding violation.
So, as being said, I believe on the west side of the property there is already an existing chain link fence. And that is going all the way to the property line, and I would like to have my fence cover that chain link fence with the 6 feet on the west side, although it's passing the structure. So if it's a 4 feet, then the chain link fence that it already exists gonna be above it, and then I believe if I cover it with a wooden plank horizontal fence panel, it's gonna look value to the community, and it's gonna look a lot nicer.
Okay.
I think that's what I would like to see if I could get the maximum height for my property, and thank you for your attention.
One question.
Yes.
Have you also thought about adding landscaping as an additional buffer?
Absolutely. So
Okay.
landscaping is planned. The
Because the
property is
landscaping
currently
could certainly
developed.
go taller than the fence.
Yeah, landscaping, you mean bushes?
Yes, anything, bushes.
Yeah, so
bushes.
in front of the fence is required to have some sort of landscaping, so I'm planning to do that, yes.
Get something that grows tall.
I was told I cannot have it that tall, so I
Okay.
don't know who checks it or how that goes, but definitely it's going to be
But you
planted.
could probably have it taller on the other side of the fence on your property.
As of now, nothing
No.
is planted. It's only weed growth that I take care
Okay,
of.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone from the public that wishes to say something? If not, I'll close the public discussion. Did we do disclosures? I think we did.
Yeah.
So I'll open it up to board discussion.
I have a question for
Good.
Trish. Just for clarification, you were okay with 6 feet high along the back of the house property and the side of the property, but the front of the property needed to be within your guidelines or to be acceptable was 4 foot in the front?
Anything that extends beyond the front elevation of the property should be at a lower height. And in our guidelines, it states 3 feet
3 feet.
with 30% visibility. We've had multiple discussions about the 4-foot high fence and several cases that have been approved and accepted in the past. And that's something we're considering incorporating into an updated version of the Sailboat Bend ordinance, is that increased height to 4 feet. But we haven't
Okay.
amended that section of
But
the code
until
yet.
that's a rule, we're still talking 3
Yeah.
feet with a little wiggle room of 4 feet coming. But the 4 foot does not apply to the back of the property or the
No.
size of the property.
Yeah, it's
So-
only what extends forward past the front elevation.
So from a security standpoint, since there's an issue here, if she had her 6 foot everywhere but the front of the property, and she had 4 foot, this property had a 4-foot fence in the front of the property, but she landscaped it to increase the security issue, could you live with that, ma'am?
Yes.
Okay, that's all I wanted to ask and find out, because that's
Thank
what
you.
I would be prone to suggest and approve.
Thank you so much. I also just wanted to add that I got approved on the property next door for 4 feet, so that would also look really weird if this property.
This, you're talking about the property
I
next door?
own the property next door as well, so it would look really weird if that property has 4 feet fence and this one has only 3.
Of course.
Yeah.
And what kind of fence are they?
Same,
Similar,
horizontal wood.
similar.
Mm.
Okay. Any other board members?
I have a question. It looks like on the photo on the front of the staff report that on the property, I don't know, I have the, but there is a taller than 4-foot chain link fence along the side of the property.
On the west side, yes. On the west side of the property, all the way to the property line, the neighbor has a chain link fence on his property that it's exceeding 4 feet. It's 6 feet, and
So
then
I
I
would-
provided pictures of the historic board.
I agree with Tim that for security reasons and for also the optics, I mean, you would want to cover that, that chain link fence. If I was putting a fence on my property, I would not want to then visually see on top of my
Of course.
wood fence, a chain link fence on the other side. The whole point of part of the point of putting a pretty fence like that is to beautify your property and improve the property. And so I agree with Tim that I'm leaning to permit that they be able to do the 6 feet on the side and then the 4 foot in front.
Okay. Anyone else? I have a few comments. I also agree with Tim and Ashley that we have approved a 4-foot fence previously in the front, and to be consistent, I would approve this one, even though we've often said that we're waiting for the guidelines to change, but I know that could be a long-term effort. And also that it should go up to 6 feet, but it's going to have to go up to 6 feet, not at the very front of the fence, but at the front of the house. So you,
So the front of the house, I could get the
well, in other
4?
words, the side fence
But
can
it's
be
already
6
6
feet
feet?
until it reaches the front elevation of the house, then it has to go down to 4 feet.
Yeah, so,
But you can plant something, do something with that.
so is it not possible to get it approved for 6 feet?
We will see if somebody makes a motion to do that.
Okay.
If you look at the property in the picture, though, you can see if you stop right at the elevation of the house, then you're still going to have that chain link fence that's going to still poke through.
I think that's where landscaping may come in, perhaps. Does anyone else comments?
I mean, we've gone around this quite a few times with walls, and I try to be equitous with all of these properties and fair to everybody. There is an ongoing concern about safety and security, which is real, and I don't think that we can negate just because it says 36 inches, that isn't something that we need to address, and for the homeowners and the property owners, that they should feel safe in their homes. Landscaping can block the view just as much as a 4-foot fence or a 6-foot fence. So I don't think that you're achieving your goal by keeping it low at 36 inches. I mean, it's being realistic. And I see where in the sailboat bend guidelines on gardens and walls, it does not talk about height at all. It talks about, in the Fort Lauderdale rules, about it being a guideline for 36 inches. Now, I know just in January, with the other newer construction that went up, on the street, we approved a 4-foot fence. So again, we go back and forth, but yes, it might imply 36 inches, but I don't think it's fair to keep going back and forth, wavering back and forth when one property is acceptable and the other one it's not. So I'm going to continue to advocate for people feeling safe in their home, and that some of these guidelines are not necessarily appropriate for certain neighborhoods, and Sailboat Bend, it's typically not.
Richard, just so you know, we've had many discussions up here over the years regarding the fact that many of us did not think that 3 foot was sufficient, but we have to wait for the guidelines to be revised before Tricia can have that freedom. So with that, are there any other comments?
Well, and the other thing too is that the variety of height for fences in Sailboat Bend is pretty arbitrary. So some are even higher than 6 feet,
Right.
I think. You may correct me there. But anyway, it's because people have put them up at different times in different situations. But I agree that safety is a huge concern, and that we should approve the 4 and the 6.
Would someone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the resolution for a certificate of appropriateness for major alterations under case number UDP-HP 23008, located at 920 Southwest Second Street, based on the facts and findings as outlined in the staff report. And I would end the motion there.
And
not put-
your approval, does your approval include changes to what has been said? In other words,
Excuse me,
in the
sorry.
motion, it says 3 foot high.
I would, as the applicant, with the 4 foot in the front and 6 feet on the sides.
So you approve the motion with the changes.
Just read the conditions there. They're there.
I would say the portion of the fence, 6 feet on height on the western property line and 4 feet of height in the front.
So question for you.
Yes.
With the property line on the side, the 6 foot high, Tricia has mentioned that the city guidelines compel a 6 foot fence to stop at the front elevation. Just information. I'm just wondering what you want to
That's
include
the
in your
city
motion.
guideline for all properties in the city?
Tricia?
Yeah, for all historic properties in the city, then that's the guideline, that you wouldn't have a fence over 3 feet in height. And that's what we typically have to consider at staff level. We have to,
We're talking about the side fence.
yeah,
talking about how
anything
you're
that
gonna have to drop
extends in
down.
front of the front elevation.
Yeah.
I would motion for the 6 feet as the applicant has applied.
Thank you.
To bring it all the way out. Is that what you mean?
Not all the way to the street, but
You
yeah.
mean
to-
all the way? well,
All
it
the way
would-
to cover the fence, the fence next door.
So we have a 6 foot fence on the side. We have the house here.
Yep.
Are you stopping, you're not stopping the fence at the house, you want to stop it all the way at the front property line where the
Yeah,
fence
I think they
goes?
should be able to extend to the front.
Okay.
Just for clarification, so the first condition on the last page of the staff report, you're not including that in your motion? Are you including the second one?
Yes, the application is subject to the approval by building, zoning, and all ULDR requirements, including landscaping.
Okay, so the first condition is not included, just make sure. Thanks.
I just have one comment as part of my comments. As much as I do appreciate the need for security, I'm concerned about setting a precedent because we have to look ahead for the decisions that we make in the future. And I'm not comfortable with having a fence height change at a corner like that, especially in the front. That's all I'm saying.
I guess the issue that I would have with the property is how you would have to be able to cover that. I mean, think about it, because next door, it doesn't go all the way. If you look at the picture, it doesn't go all the way to the street, but it does go about halfway up the property. And so you're going to have a fence that's going to end, and you're still going to look at the fence next door. So there already is a fence that exceeds 3 feet next door.
Right. I think that's where landscaping might come in. But again, it depends on what the board thinks.
Yeah.
I'll
So
second
that's
the
your motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay. Okay, let's have a roll call.
All in favor?
Mr. Bray?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Marcus?
No.
Mr. Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Pass 5 to 1.
Congratulations.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, for the good of the city of Fort Lauderdale?
The first item listed is to elect a chair and potentially a vice chair, because our previous chair, Jason Blink, is no longer on the board. So you would accept motions for nominations for the chair?
I move to,
It's just until June, until the yearly election. So it's just until June when we
Oh,
have the
okay.
yearly election.
I move to elect Arthur Marcus as a chair, board chairman.
I second. Are you willing to do it, Arthur?
I'm willing to do
Good.
it.
I don't want to rope you into something.
Okay.
So we'll take a roll call.
Do you want a roll call? Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Marcus?
Yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
Ms. Walker?
Yes.
And Mr. Bray?
Yes.
Passed 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Congratulations.
I know there was a big rush for the job.
Yeah.
So now
all-
we have to elect a vice chair.
We're all salivating.
Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I have a question. If Richard Rose is not here, can he still be nominated?
He can, but I don't know if he'll accept it.
I move to nominate Richard Rosa as board vice chair.
Well, I would second that if it's not going to create a big problem.
Well, if he doesn't accept it, we'll find out at the next
And
meeting,
we'll have
hopefully.
another election.
Okay,
All right, we have to vote on this, though.
yes,
We should have a roll call vote.
Hold on, do we have a second?
I did.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Mr. Bray?
Yes.
Ms. Lyons?
Yes.
Mr. Marcus?
Yes.
Mr. Carney?
Yes.
Mr. Chavon?
Yes.
And Ms. Walker?
Yes.
Passed 6-0.
Thank you. So Tricia, will you tell Richard the good news?
Yes, I will.
Okay.
I will let him know.
Great, thank you.
I'm sure he'll be ecstatic.
Okay.
Arthur,
And
now you can start missing meetings.
you're right. What else?
And then the next thing on the agenda is an announcement about an event that's occurring on Sunday, this Sunday, March 12th, at the Rivermont Archaeological Site. And we're having an event to celebrate Florida Archaeology Month. So we're partnering with History Fort Lauderdale and the Florida Public Archaeology Network to hold an event to display signs throughout the property that give an overview of the history of the site so that people can come and understand and enjoy the newly opened Waverly Park in the Sailboat Bend Historic District. And we're going to have a couple of activities. One is a scavenger hunt to just go around and find the different locations on the site pertaining to the history. And we're also going to have a bead making activity that History Fort Lauderdale is organizing.
Great. And this is when, just to repeat
This
it?
is this Sunday, March 12th, from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the Rivermont Archaeology Site
Okay.
in Sailboat Bend.
Great. Does anyone else have anything?
Yeah, I'm just going to follow
What
up.
time, the transcript at the bottom covered the time. Is it 1
Yep.
o'clock?
It's 11 a.m. to 2 p.m.
Thank you.
Richard?
I'm just going to follow up with a little bit of a question I had earlier about the archaeological studies and reports that were required on a lot of these properties. What happens to those, and are they available to the public, or what is the result of requiring all of those reports?
So we're a certified local government at the city of Fort Lauderdale, and as part of that, we're required to review any site that may have archaeological significance. So we do have a map that delineates archaeologically significant zones throughout the city of Fort Lauderdale. And anytime we have a new development or anything that comes to the Historic Preservation Board that would require a significant amount of ground disturbing work, we would review that request with our archaeology consultant, Matt DeFelice, who worked for a long time at Broward County, and make a recommendation as far as what would be the next steps for archaeology review. So in general, we're looking to just make sure that anything of significance pertaining to archaeology is not disturbed. If it is going to be disturbed, that there is mitigation in place to record and care for that information. And then that information is typically recorded with the state. Those are generally technical reports that contain raw data that are protected by Florida Sunshine Law. So they don't generally get distributed to the public, but if there is an interest in a particular site where we don't have like a designation report for or a summary report for, then we can certainly discuss that with the interested party, but we wouldn't necessarily distribute the technical reports out to the general public just because of the way that those are treated
Sure.
by the state.
Tricia, question.
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't a summation of the report be in the designation or in the
Well, if it
your
is
report?
designated, I mean, it really depends on the situation. So like with Rivermont, it's designated as a local archaeological site. It's also on the National Register. So we do have information that's prepared for that site that's in a more, not sure what the appropriate word is, but like an easier way to digest information. It's been analyzed and written in a way that can portray the history of the site without having raw technical data just out there for interpretation by someone that's not an archaeologist. So, so that I think is the concern of archaeologists. I admit all the time I'm not an archaeologist. That's why we do have Matt available to help with answering questions and just the additional review process. But it is something that's mandated by the fact that we are a certified local government. We also have it in our code that we will be reviewing any major impacts.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And just one other question I have about the incentives that we have been lacking, I guess, in the conversation we've had about construction. Basically, some of what is a result of the January meeting we had, where the conversation was kind of about the style of homes that were being built. And I think that we as a board could do something to incentivize people as architects or homeowners for coming forward with plans that are more in keeping with the pre-1940 concept, original concept of the historic district of Sailboat Bend. So I'm not sure how we can have a discussion or what the board can do to make a recommendation to the commissioners for considering incentives, or what role we can have in having those discussions.
Well, I think we have to schedule a discussion at the board here first to
Yeah.
see what the sentiment is, because that's a big discussion.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be, I imagine, a discussion amongst the board, and then there would
Invite
be
the public.
consideration if there's any sort of communication that would want to be passed along to the city commission to make any particular recommendations to amend the ordinance or to create a new set of guidelines. In general, we have guidelines that are applicable citywide that we take a look at in conjunction with the Sailboat Bend material and design guidelines when we're looking at new construction. So we have to take into consideration a lot of different aspects when reviewing projects. And
Well,
all new
let's-
construction comes to the board.
So we should, if this is to be a discussion item,
Right,
we should do this at another time.
correct.
We'd
And
have to.
I would want I would want to prepare for that.
Yes.
But also understand a little bit more what's meant by incentives, because we do have incentives for historic preservation in general.
And I'd also like to have it incorporate the discussion of, I know people want to talk about what's appropriate, but I have a hard time building new historic replicas because I don't think that's appropriate. I've worked with many historic districts where they prize and value the contributions of each architectural era So you see different eras standing next to one another. So there's a lot of different ways to look at this.
And Sailboat Bend itself is an eclectic neighborhood that represents a wide variety of styles and a longer time period. And the City Commission and the Historic Preservation Board did approve an update to our Sailboat Bend survey, which does lengthen the time periods for periods of significance. So, you know, that should be something
Okay.
taken into consideration as well. And then there's different contexts in which new construction's occurring. So in some instances, you know, you do want to look at the immediate context in addition to the overall significance of the neighborhood. And in some instances, the immediate context may call for something slightly more contemporary or transitional.
I think this is going to be a very difficult discussion because you're dealing with a lot of subjective opinions. And I think we have to be careful because it certainly would be open to the public. And we just need to really think further, I think, about how to get our heads around that.
And staff can provide guidance to applicants, but at the end of the day, an applicant can submit a request to the board for consideration
Right.
in whatever form they choose. So
Great.
then staff is just evaluating the application that's submitted. As long as we have a complete application, we have to schedule it for a Historic Preservation Board meeting.
I have a question for Sherry. I like Richard's idea a whole lot. And what's been stopping us from being able to move forward is just getting together to talk. What is there out there that's okay to do that doesn't come under the sunshine law if there is such
We
a
have to
way?
talk at the board. That's the only thing.
Yeah,
You can only-
that's what's hindering us from just sitting down and having a kind of brainstorming conversation between a board to say.
We can't do that without
We
the
can't do
public.
that.
I'm trying to establish a way to do something because we keep going in circles with, we can't do that, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do this. So what can we do and how can we
Well,
do
let's
it?
ask our attorney.
What would step one be?
Because this issue could come before the board to make actually a decision on it, then you really aren't supposed to go out and to talk with each other or anything. You have to talk here. And then if you do talk to anyone in the public, then you'll have to disclose who you spoke to and, you know, that kind of thing. So you want to stay away from that. The public is invited to these meetings. They can express their opinions one way or another. I would suggest limiting it to these meetings.
So if someone on this board was to draft a letter to the board to be read at a meeting, it said, I have an idea, I have a suggestion. Here are some new guidelines that we think would be helpful in historic preservation's cause. And here are some ideas for incentives, and here are some ideas for some new criteria for your consideration. And the board looked at it and read it out loud to each other and said, we can send this to the commission for their consideration and could it come under, at the end of a meeting, as new business?
I think when it comes to the letter drafting itself, I think the best way to do that would be after the board talks about the
Right.
issues, then Tricia or someone from staff can draft a commission memorandum, and that can go to the commission, because the board isn't really its own entity. It is a part of the city, and so that's governed by the city commission. So it's really not appropriate to use a letter from the board per se.
I'm just trying to find the legal avenue to go down to get our commission to open a door to have a discussion about incentives and a reevaluation of what is practical for the purpose of preservation. So we move expeditiously but cautiously and fairly with everybody who comes before this board.
I think in my experience, when it comes to the city commission, I think it's best to make sure that we're clear on what the issues are here and exactly what those incentives that we're recommending, because otherwise, if you make a blanket motion and say, we would like you to have incentives, then nobody really knows what that is, because we already do have incentives, and we went pretty far with them. I'm not quite sure what else is out there,
Okay.
but we're open to hearing it. It's just that it's best to actually come up with what your specific incentives that you're recommending are, and then we can go to the commission with that.
Well, there's a lot of little things, like when Richard brought up a good point tonight about the fence and the landscaping, and it, for me, a light went on in my head when he said, well, what's the difference if you have a 4-foot fence, 3-foot fence, and a 6-foot hedge? You still can't see the building. So from the security issue, if we take the security issue off the table, is it 6-foot hedge impeding the visual appreciation of the historic building? And if it isn't, then why is a 6-foot fence impeding it? So I'm just trying to open these doors up for discussion so that we get clearer when we sit here and we talk to people, and when they walk into the place, they know what their expectations can be. And of course, Patricia, you're the historian on all this, and I've always wanted to go to another city and see how they're doing it, and I keep putting that off. But I wonder how some of these other cities that deal with these things deal with them. I wonder how they communicate. I wonder how they got so far down the road. Is it how long has the Sunshine Law been in effect in the city of Fort Lauderdale, state of Florida?
Oh, I'm not sure about that, but I can look it up for you. But
It's a while.
It
Like
has
20 years?
I'm not sure. I would have to look it up for you, but I will have the answer for you in the next meeting.
I
definitely.
understand it and respect what it's meant to do, but it's a toughie for this.
May I suggest that perhaps what would be useful for the next meeting, if we do have it, is to possibly maybe for all of you to print out or look at on the computer the guidelines and tell us what guidelines you have issues with and what your ideas are for changing them. And then we could talk about that
How
in
would we
detail.
communicate that to you?
Oh, at the meeting. And
At
then
a
we can go
meeting.
through it one by one of what you think should change, and then we can have
Okay.
a discussion on that.
Okay.
If Trisha's open to it, that is, just a suggestion.
Good timing.
Good timing. Thank you for talking.
And the only
The
last
end.
thing I have is,
So, what was
Historic Preservation Month is coming up again, and so is there anything that we as a city or as a board would like to accomplish in Historic Preservation Month?
I'd like to designate more buildings, but that's not going to happen in 1 month.
We don't have anything planned at the moment for Historic Preservation Month from
Well-
staff level.
One thing that's coincidental, which I was going to mention, on your way out, I have an exhibition of photographs in the lobby of mid-century modern buildings, some from Fort Lauderdale, but all from South Florida. So that's my contribution to Historic Preservation Month.
Well, and that is an example of having an exhibition of, some of the historic
Right.
properties in Fort Lauderdale, or, the history of Fort Lauderdale. So
Maybe we can do something for next year.
It's in May, though.
It's what?
It is May. It's in May.
Yes. And question for you, could you repeat, the Castro convertible building is coming before the city commission in April?
Yes, currently it's scheduled for April 18th.
Okay.
Are they still fighting it?
We have not heard from the applicant on the record.
So the applicant would probably be expected at the commission?
Or not the applicant, I'm sorry, the property owner.
The property, property owner.
Yeah,
So we've not heard anything from the property owner
not officially on the record.
that you can talk about? Okay. With that, does anyone else have anything else? So we'll open it up to a motion to
motion to adjourn.
adjourn.
So moved.
Amen.
Seconded, all All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Yay.